Item D, receive a report on a policy for general fund and equipment replacement reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is a continuation of a staff report that was presented to City Council back on April 27th, where we drafted a reserve policy. Several questions or additional information was requested by City Council, and this report provides responses to to those inquiries. Among the questions that were asked by the City Council were costs that the city incurred when we had the 1998 landslide from the El Nino storms. Second question that was asked for by the City Council were what are the reserve levels for some of our neighboring cities? And then a third question from the City Council was a detailed listing of the city's equipment replacement fund assets, which is the basis for the policy that's recommended or that's before the City Council in terms of the level for the equipment replacement reserve. So I'll start with the question on the El Nino rainstorms and the costs associated with the landslide. Staff looked back on the records, and approximately $1.3 million was expended for that particular event as related to the landslides. And those costs incurred included the repair, obviously, of the landslide, including excavation, hauling of materials and debris, construction of reinforced earth fill, installation of gutters, and then restoration of backyards and the landscaping of the impacted homes. In terms of the comparison of reserve levels with some of our neighboring cities, the slide before you gives an overview of some of the neighbor cities up and down the peninsula. San Bruno, what I'm recommending for the City Council for consideration is a level between 16 and 2/3% to 25%. That's really 2 to 3 months of reserves for the city's general fund. Currently, our reserve level is at 19%. This is about $6 million out of the $31.3 million general fund expenditures for the current year's budget. As you can tell, looking at the slide, the range actually varies quite a bit, but I think it's fair to say that we're within the general range. We have a low of 6.6% in terms of current levels and a high of 50%. But if you take out those as anomalies, if I may, certainly our level of 19% or our recommended level of 16 and 2/3 and 25% is within, I believe, the range within the peninsula cities that we looked at. With that said, one of the things that we also have to be mindful of is that while there are general fund reserves that many cities have identified, there are also other reserves that are identified by cities, some more than others. Among those reserves that are considered could be Economic Uncertainty Fund, a Catastrophic Emergency Fund, a PERS Liability Fund, Post-Employment Benefits Fund, other funds that could be considered, and just as important, and I think was discussed earlier, is a Capital Facilities Fund that's to replace capital facilities and also to repair and maintain the city's assets, infrastructure assets. Other options or other considerations in terms of reserves may include even a PERS and or a medical benefits rate stabilization fund. So those are other things that certainly can be, within the broad range of considerations of other designations of reserves over and above a general fund reserve and over and above an equipment replacement reserve. As I indicated earlier, what staff's recommendation is for a general fund reserve level of between 2 to 3 months. And that, again, is between the 16 and 2/3% and 25% keeping in mind that currently we're at the 19% level. In terms of the equipment replacement reserve, included in staff report is a detailed listing of the assets that are held there. One of the things to be mindful of is also the fact that included in the listing are replacements of the of the police black and white vehicles. That's actually included in the operating budget. So historically, the city has included those as an operating expenditure as opposed to setting aside those monies in the equipment replacement fund. The rationale for that is that it's typical that every 3 years we go through the expected life of these vehicles are approximately 3 years. So as you go through each and every one of those vehicles, typically every year there are some replacements that take place, and that's just been incorporated as part of the operating budget setup that we have. And over and above that, there are also other significant items in the capital replacement fund that would be considered potentially as part of capital facility replacement. And that would include something like the current finance software that's substantial in terms of cost that would be considered potentially as part of the technology or a CIP projects type of replacement that would garner a significant amount of funds in order to capture the replacement of these major undertakings. So with that, I'll take questions from the City Council in terms of this updated report and seek comments and direction from the City Council.
Questions, comments? This is an information item. Receive a report, so there's no action necessary. Michael?
Through the chair. One thing I noticed is that compared to other cities, at least in the area, we're pretty aggressive in what we're funding in reserves. But some of the things I considered that might be significant for our area, and I don't know what the other cities are thinking or how much of the numbers that we're seeing here are specifically general fund reserves versus some of the other funds that you discussed. Mm-hmm. But it does seem that in difficult economic times, being here in the Bay Area, that we are somewhat subject to larger fluctuations than other cities in general would be. I know here we're talking about other cities in the area, but it does seem that when we have corrections in real estate prices, they seem to hit us a little harder, and that seems to be something that really drives what our revenue is. And that's one thing I considered when we start looking at that overall number. I do appreciate you getting all this information together. I know it probably took some time to gather all this. One thing you mentioned that I like the idea of segregating the funds so that we know exactly what we have available for, say, economic emergencies, and then we know if we need to dip in there. I think this, the past couple of years have been good indicators of how severe our deficit can get, and we could probably appropriately size a pool of money for that, and then designate other monies for emergencies. And having the El Nino data, of course, provides us another good data point. So I don't know what the rest of the council feels about that, but I'd like us to at least think about how we might want to break those down and segregate it, and it would also make the development of a policy on how we use those funds and when we use those funds a little clearer. And then related to the equipment replacement reserve, I was wondering how much money, or if any money in there, is being considered for technology refreshes. And I know that as we sort of modernize the way we operate as a city, technology becomes a more important component. And I saw a few software items, a few large items in there, but I'm wondering, even things like desktop PCs that the employees use, are we stockpiling some money somewhere where we can replace those? They have pretty limited lifespans, and the new software requirements generally require faster processors, more memory, and so that's probably something, if we're not considering it, that we should.
Yes, we actually do have a internal service fund for technology upgrades, so PC refreshes would be certainly part and parcel for the uses of those funds.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good.
If I could just offer a lot of reference to El Nino, and I think it should be said that the city had every indication of being reimbursed by FEMA, and unfortunately, through the history of that area and that hillside, FEMA rejected any reimbursement, so we ate it all. So it doesn't mean that any disaster in San Bruno, we'd have to absorb all the costs. I believe that there might be some reimbursement in some cases.
Any comments?
Through the chair, a little bit on the Councilman Salazar. I was wondering about the cable TV and its equipment. I know there was an item, and I can't recall, that went out, and we had to replace it. And then there was dialogue, well, that should probably be in the equipment reserve so that we can keep either a spare, we can have it modernized. Do we also have cable TV and those assets and equipment, are we?
Yes. The way it's set up is that each one of the enterprise funds is self-sustaining. When I say self-sustaining, meaning that included in each enterprise fund is actually a plan to replace their related assets. So, for instance, the cable, if you look at the cable fund in terms of acquisition of assets, it's actually coming straight out of that enterprise fund. There's no money's really coming out of this separate fund, which is really for the governmental funds, which are the funds besides the enterprise funds.
Okay, so just so I understand, so you are saying that there are, does the city manager want to say something before I keep going?
I just wanted to clarify that the finance director is identifying that each of the funds is self-contained as to its operating, its capital, and its equipment replacement amounts. The cable television fund, so you see, for example, a question was asked earlier when we looked at the budget numbers about the amount of revenues far exceeding the amount of expenditures in the water and wastewater funds. Equipment reserves are included in those amounts of the fund balance that in those cases far exceed the operating expenditures, and you will see amounts being recommended for designation to capital projects, as the director indicated earlier. In the cable television fund, as has been previously discussed by the City Council, while that is the operational profile of the funds, the current situation in the cable television enterprise, it does not allow for, there is not a positive fund balance that is, at least at the current time, available if a piece of equipment at the head end were to fail, for that fund then to be utilized to, without impact to the budget or to resources. That is an issue that has been under discussion by the City Council, is one that is progressing towards resolution over the next period of several years. Although the City Council may recall that at one time in the past, and this continues to be how the fund operates, in fact, a system rebuild that happened approximately 15 years ago did occur with amounts that had been built up over a period of time. So that's the theory, but again, the short answer to your question, because I don't want you to be misinformed, is that in fact, at the current time in that fund, the fund position is in deficit, and it does, there is no positive amounts available for that purpose.
Thank you for the clarification. That was my point, is that when we originated the system and then we had its first upgrade in cable, we had enough, as you said, built up in order to pay for that upgrade, we'll call it. I know there's a better technology word, but I don't know what to use. However, when we've been upgrading now, we are running a deficit because we don't have monies allocated in order to keep up with the technology and demand of our customers. So that's where I'm saying that should be more taken into account, and I believe utilized within this. I think there's equipment and items that are used that should be triggered within the equipment reserve, so we are preparing ourselves for the future. I also think the Capital Facilities Fund, That's something that I've already alluded to earlier, but in essence, had we have had the ability to take ERAF or other things and not use them for one time this and that, and build that, you know, maybe out of, if we could have started in better times, maybe we could have gotten a new pool. Back then, we were talking about 5 million, and if you put so much away and save and have a goal and a desire, I think we can achieve that. But I think we also need to have long-term planning, and I think that's one thing that we have, unfortunately, not always done. This is the newest facility we're in here today, and this is from 1987. And then we, of course, have the police station. So I think we also need to plan for the future, and I think this might be an indication in which to help that and drive that, so we maintain our facilities and not just try to put Band-Aids or just get through to another 5 or 10 years.
Well, I think our, got to comment on this. I mean, I think our focus in the last 15 years was going from the ground up. And the thing is that we did plan long-term, and and as much as we may be somewhat stagnant in the cable, we are up to date. We have a fairly new, in the industry, a fairly new system and an up-to-date system, probably state-of-the-art in comparison to our competitors. And the fact that we have done a lot as far as the infrastructure of the city, water, sewer, wastewater. So I think we've done what we can. And yes, there probably can question more that we could do, but we'll blame previous administrations for that.
That's easy.
I said it.
I was going to echo what you said, because it's when three of us started 15, almost 16 years ago now, there was nothing. There was no plans. There was no 5-year plan. There was no anything. And now we have several plans. We do have a new police station. We try 2 different revenue to get revenue streams passed that did not get passed. So I think it's a hard balance between how much you charge people for capital improvements that they can't see, and you know, we have millions and millions of dollars of sewer and water improvements that need to be made, and then where do you get the rest of the money? You know, it's difficult, and that's one of the reasons we tried to did pass redevelopment, was because of the things that need to get done. And we're with you, but we're still looking for those revenue streams. So if there's anybody out there who wants to donate several $1 million, let us know.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, Ed.